So, well, hey everyone, happy Friday. If you haven't watched the last stream, or even if you have, still happy Friday. Let me know if everything's working out in the stream. It's been a little bit of a rocky, rocky day / a few weeks / everything. So just let me know everything's good before we officially start the thing. Yeah, it sound good for you guys. Let me just see. Everything works fine, says Marina. Well, thank you for that, Marina. That is quite the relief. YouTube happening fine. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do some more tests for Odyssey and stuff because I have the thing that I was using to stream to Odyssey just is not working, so I had to do something else to stream to Odyssey, and that, whatever. So as far as I'm aware, I'm just going to just upload this to Odyssey tomorrow, but it'll just be YouTube only, old school, boomer style, whatever you have it. And speaking of old and boomer and all that kind of stuff, I'm going to hit the old intro for the old Dash podcast format. So don't judge me. I'm getting a new logo and stuff like that figured out, which will be nice and sweet and sexy and all that kind of stuff. But it's, not yet. Not today. But anyway, let's hit this intro real quick. So, hey everyone, happy Friday once more. Welcome to the Dash Podcast. I'm joined by the one and only Patrick Quinn, Interim CEO of Dash Core Group. How's it going?
Hey, good to be with you, Joel. Yeah. Again. This is our second, is that right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. Second overall, only the first during the CEO stretch.
Yeah, well then definitely lots to talk about. That means that it's going to be just the same as the other stuff, except everyone's going to be mad at you now because
that's right.
You're the guy that's like, Wenevo now. You're Mr. Wenevo.
Is this? I thought that was supposed to be the Dash logo. Was that actually a target? I think most people look at that as a target, right? So everyone's aiming at that.
One and the same. Well, at least it's the new logo.
That's right.
That's like one of those.
This is my swag that I wore to Moonclave in Aspen, Colorado, and I had to order this from Australia of all places, but I got it.
I wonder if that was XKCD who sold that.
Yeah, I was debating with him recently about it. He had a different resource. The reason I got it from Australia, they actually have a lot more variations, like Dash logo. Few understand this, or I'm powered by Dash and coffee, or some pretty nifty variations. So I thought that was cool. So I rewarded them with my international shipping dollars.
Yeah. Well, that's good. All right, so before we jump into everything, I should remind everyone that if you have one of my NFTs, you can leave comments in the super chat on my Discord. And it's kind of like I've tried to cryptoify everything in my life. And so if someone owns one of my NFTs and they enter my Discord, there's a bot that checks if they have the NFT or not. And if they don't have it, they get kicked out. So it's just like, providing real world utility, this kind of stuff. And there's a Dash podcast channel that goes in. Right now, it's just my general NFTs and stuff that work for everything. I've had some positive kind of feedback that maybe I should start selling just Dash podcast specific NFTs that just they don't want to people don't care about the rest of the stuff I do, but they want to watch this show specifically. And so for that show specifically, I get a cheaper one. And so I am getting made a cool, shiny little 3D animation of a Dash logo, which of course I'll let everyone use as well, but for the NFT specifically. And so that would be cool. But in the meantime, you can do that. Or over here, there's a cointr.ee/thedesertlinks. And you can go in there and send a little Dash donation, and then it'll kind of go through, and it's clunkier. It's not as cool as the Discord thing. And yeah. So why don't we just actually, well, we'll start with that in just a little bit. We got plenty of time. So, well, first, before we get to like the questions, just how have you been? What have you been up to? And what's going on at DCG? Just like a big ol' overview of like where everything's at. And then we'll start jumping into specific questions.
Yep. So I've had a blast. I've been busier than a one-legged man at an ass-kicking contest, as the old British saying goes. One of my British co-founders used that. But that was as expected, so no worries there. Yeah, it's been a lot of work, but a lot of fun, kind of culminating in the Moonclave conference in Aspen, Colorado. That was 2 weeks ago. If I had my druthers, all I would do is come on the Dash podcast once every couple of weeks or once a month and attend conferences in between and evangelize. It's kind of a luxury at this point. There's some more tactical work to be done. So
Yeah, of course.
yeah, so that's my own personal take, but things are busy as can be. It's a busy hive of activity inside DCG, and that's positive. One of the things that's top of mind for me is that we're working under duress in a lot of ways. You notice that kind of thing when you travel outside your bubble and you see the rest of the world. So I'm fresh off that conference, and there's a lot of competitors out there, but that's good. That keeps us on our toes. But it then has me kind of coming back to reality inside DCG and wanting to, keep plugging away the things we've been doing. So we've been making some good progress in a lot of different areas.
Yeah. What are some of those areas you don't mind just hitting on a couple that you've been making the best progress in?
Best progress is the thing that I've focused on the most because I think it's the most important. And it's the number one item on the CEO scorecard. By the way, I think it was Doc Agnew who had asked in the AMA podcast questions channel, are we going to have a big reveal on the CEO scorecard today? No, we're not. So I'll just clarify that up front. We are going to have a big reveal, but not now. It's not even really the end of the 90-day period. That's not for a few more weeks. And then there'll be a whole process for, by the way, there's a kind of a related question, like who's scoring that? So I'm going to do my own scoring. I want people to see my own objective assessment of myself and my effort. But I welcome anybody to submit grades or scores, however you want to, score it. And the trust protectors will also have something to say about that. And, possibly maybe the DCG board will comment, but it's kind of open season. So anyway, that's how we'll deal with that once we come to the end of the 90 days officially, which is in a few weeks. Take a breath and then start talking about it. Anyway, back to the point though. The number one item I put on there was to get the roadmap and the associated delivery schedule clarified. There may be some open debate on what's the biggest criticism of DCG over the years, but it's safe to say that being late is one of them, right? Is maybe the number one. So, we all come to the table with history and baggage and biases and experience and all that good stuff. So all of that for me is I came up the ranks as a developer, as we've talked about a few times now. So being late on the delivery schedule, it kind of strikes an allergic reaction in me as a developer, from a developer's perspective. So I really dislike that. I think that credibility as a development shop, that's essentially what DCG is. It's a software company.
Yeah.
We build software for sure. Build and ship software is the ideal. And we've done some good things on the build side, not so great on the ship side. So I wanted to understand that what's going on there. Are there problems? Are there problems that can be fixed, et cetera? So I focused on that one the most. It's the single item that I've spent the most amount of time on, mostly for the first couple of months. And then lately I've really transitioned to focusing on number two, which is clarifying the strategic vision for Dash. That's actually a lot harder, but it's harder in different ways. But there's an old saying in the military that you cannot attempt the strategic until you've mastered the tactical, or something along those lines. No disrespect, I'm not a military guy, but I try to follow military smarts wherever I can. Sun Tzu, and then all the way down from there, right? Like a lot of us. it's kind of applying that philosophy. You know, I want to make sure we have mastered the tactical delivery of software, the translation of a vision to a roadmap with an associated calendar, and then stick to it, right? On time and on budget. Those are kind of the basics of, you know, high quality modern software development. So we've made good progress on that. We have some new tooling in place that we didn't have in place before. It's purpose-built tooling software that handles this kind of thing. It's complicated. First of all, platform itself it's really complicated. This is not we're not, you know, developing the next version of some library that other developers use, or even something bigger like some ERP system. It's complicated, and a lot of it is new, right? But that's all the more reason why we have to have our tactical game at the A level, right? Top of our game. So handling things like dependencies and resource allocation and double booking of engineering time. Let's say there's a problem with testnet. Obviously, we've heard that before. It turns out that can result in some severe double booking of time for days at a time, right? Well, that's got to be captured somewhere, or you've just missed days of delay. And that kind of a problem rears its head about 10 times a day in most software projects, right? So the tooling needs to be able to capture all that stuff, vacation time or scope creep, changes in estimates, all, you know, based on, you know, refinement of requirements or discovering, you know, new requirements, unknowns, et cetera, et cetera. It's complicated, but there's an entire world of expertise out there. And sure enough, we had some opportunities to implement some of that. So that's underway. It's in good hands. Balash Bezzi and Brian Foster in particular have helped a lot with this. I must give credit. Brian had a fair amount of experience with this kind of thing prior, Gantt charts, things like that. I think he used Microsoft Project. There's a lot of tools out there to choose from. So we had to go through a quick tool selection process, get one implemented, take a few swings, and do some test runs. Anyway, so now there's some decent momentum for that, and that helps a lot. So we have to now iterate in our use of that, and you have to be disciplined about it. You got to stick to it. But now, on basically a week-to-week basis, we're clarifying our delivery schedule, but with using purpose-built tooling, right? So it's like legitimately quantified, you know, what our release dates can be or can't be, right? You know, we haven't issued any changes to schedules yet, but I suspect that we will. But this, to me, again, is just so essential, because if we are saying that, you know, this, that, the other thing is going to be done and ready by this date or roughly this date, we got to be pretty close. You don't have to be perfect, of course, but you got to be good at that part of the game. So that's one. And then I've shifted a lot in the last, say, 2 to 3 weeks, including the timing of this Moonclave conference was good for this reason, because then I've shifted to number 2, which is clarifying the strategic vision for Dash. So that, of course, is supposed to be the why. Why are we building what we're building? The delivery schedule and the roadmap, that's the what, right?
Yeah.
But the strategy is the why. And that's really hard, right? That's deep thinking and competitive analysis and philosophical debate. So it's almost a little backwards that I started mostly on that one second, and all the tactical, you know, tightening the delivery schedule and all that and getting some tooling in place first. But again, I see it along the lines of that old military quip. You have to have the tactical really strong before you attempt some big strategic effort. So that's kind of the direction we're going in. There's also a lot of help, despite it being complicated to do things like clarify a strategic vision or things like that. There's a lot of help for that one. So Andy Freer's put a ton of stuff out there. There's already a ton of stuff out there. There's tons of debate out there and discussion. We have a lot of competing projects that we can draw from. I was certainly listening a ton to the folks. There were 90 speakers at the Moonclave conference.
Wow, that's a lot.
Who's talking about Web3? What are they saying? Are they saying anything similar to what we're saying? Anything different? How do we compare? How do we compete, et cetera? Anyway, Troy Rhodes, I have to give some credit. One of the trust protectors, he's put a lot of effort in on this in the last, say, 2 to 3 weeks. So we're pushing towards making some progress and being able to have some visible substantive progress by the end of the 90 days or close thereafter. So that's number 2. And then number three is basically a performance management system. I won't have a particularly high grade on that. We're not going to have a functioning performance management system fully implemented and so forth. We have made some progress. We've made some progress with a system called Objectives and Key Results, OKRs. This is really a goal setting and a progress performance measurement system by engineers for engineers. This was invented at Intel Corporation decades ago by Andy Grove and all those double E PhDs who built all the silicon that generations later, we all build with and powers our lives as developers. So it's got kind of a cool ancestry with regard to developers and engineers. We've made some progress with getting towards a pilot program with that. There's learning and training and a lot of things that you have to get right to even start into something like that. So there's some progress there. Not great, to be totally honest, but again, time limitations are really the theme of my first 90 days, and that's going to show up in a lot of my lesser grades for sure, but it even shows up in whatever better grades I might get. The fourth one was better transparency and communication on the part of the CEO specifically. That could be my lowest grade. I'm not sure. I had hoped to actually get 3 AMAs with you in all 3 months, right? But here we are in month 3, and we're just getting around to the first one. So obviously I'm a little behind on that. This AMA, keeping a close eye on Discord and in particular at mentions. If anyone at mentions me or on Discord or on the Dash forum, I pay attention to that religiously, and I try to respond immediately or close to immediately. I also hang out in the after party, but I don't think that the after party actually counts as transparency with the community. But I've been in the after party almost every week.
Yeah, it's funny about the way that's sort of evolved is back in the day. First off, I wasn't planning on doing a live show at all until way back in the day. At some point, I went on Free Talk Live to talk about Dash, and then there was some back and forth with some callers, and then some Dash people called in. And then I believe it was Mastermind who was working with Dash Force with me and Mark at the same time. And he was like, "Oh, we should just do our own show." And so we just did that. And then he wanted to do an after party, like an after chat kind of thing. And then it just sort of ended up just being that. And then now it became like a staple. The thing is, there were certain times when, and a lot of this is, I guess, going to go into the whole transparency thing too. But like, there was times when, first of all, there was a lot of discussion that was not necessarily as freely allowed. Not to bring up old things, but like in the Dash Nation Discord, there's a bunch of controversy about what could be said and what couldn't be said and stuff. And so that compounded with the lack of transparency, the opaqueness of old DCG, kind of led to because people are going to talk. It's just going to happen. But it's like, where are they going to talk? And that's just kind of where it happened. It just ended up being that then you started having some trust protectors float on in there and some diff members. And then, in the wee hours of the morning, you get like the real scoop. And then it just became a thing to where it's now like a sort of a staple of the community, where if I never did another show, there would still be the after party going all the time. And then that's kind of, so I do think that, that cannot be underestimated in importance, because that's like the uncensored one-on-one time in a casual setting, which is what people really crave, I think. And it just there shouldn't be a substitute for the rest of the stuff, but I mean, it's kind of it's a great indicator of a willingness to engage with Z people. So I should just point that out.
Yeah, I wish it were bigger, because I'm perfectly willing there. I'm there almost every week. I was out of town last week, so I missed it. But I've been going a lot more during the 90-day CEO period here. I will state for the record, too, a couple of things. I have no policy of opaqueness, by the way. I have no filter in place. There's no I'm not avoiding any engagement or transparency with the community. So if someone asks me anything, anytime, I'm Johnny on the spot with that. And that's where I mentioned paying attention to, notifications from the forum or from Discord or whatever. The other thing, though, is this is going to sound like, I don't know, CEO speak or corporate speak. There is a lot of invisible communication and outreach. So like DCG has sales calls, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the sales call is with a potential exchange partner, right? And that is the time to be on the phone and to evangelize and to make the case. We get investors that call us and ask questions like, "Hey, do you guys offer qualified custodial services yourself?" Like they think DCG would offer that. No, of course we don't. But there again, that's like a sales call. So, and what's important about that is that one of the biggest challenges for Dash is we have got to cross the chasm. We have got to stop preaching to the choir and evangelizing to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We every technology. This is why best-selling books have been written about this, and it's been a pearl of wisdom for decades running. I'm thinking of Jeffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm, right?
Mm-hmm.
Technology has to cross the chasm from its early adopters, from its early advocates and evangelists. Otherwise, it's going to be stuck. It's going to be marginalized and niche forever. So, with regard to like being transparent and reaching out and talking to people, some of the most important conversations for us are the people who aren't Dash OGs and aren't total evangelists. And a related point there is there's not enough time in the day for me to do follow-up on this
Of course.
conference. This conference was loaded with investors and people who are involved in blockchain projects in a zillion different ways. I know sometimes the investor word gets ears to perk up in the Dash community, so don't worry, we're not going rogue and like all of a sudden taking VC money. But there's lots of different ways to bring in new interest, and that must include bringing in new money to the Dash community. The tokenomics of it all have got to turn around.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting urgent for us. This trading sideways at $45 a coin, give or take, is not sustainable. And so there is a decent amount of outreach like that and kind of selling that happens, especially with conference attendance. That's not necessarily going to be apparent to the community. So.
Yeah, and I mean, we could talk about this for a long time, but basically, it seems like when I'm trying to think about what's the difference between the big projects and the small project, it's not necessarily the amount of innovation necessarily, but it seems like consistent technical deliveries are a big thing. It seems like getting a lot of new money in, just people doing stuff is another big thing, and then they can leave pretty quickly. So you need recurring users. You need people that just keep using and stuff. And so, of those three, I mean, I feel like Dash has done, in some ways, very well in the first one, in that, compared to something like Litecoin or something like Bitcoin Cash or something like Bitcoin or whatever, it's been delivering consistently in some ways, but and then in other ways, it's been one of the worst performers there. If you talk about everything, when Evo and how long that's kind of taken and stuff, and then the scaling back of expectations and things like that, then that's kind of middling. Getting investment in the post 2017 era, Dash has probably been one of the worst performers as far as its class. And as far as gaining users, it's been pretty stagnant. When you kind of look at the transaction volumes and abstract some things away, and it's just like, people still use it. You still get new users, but you get people to stop using it. And so that's going to be an interesting nut to crack, and I'd like to talk about that a little bit more in length. Let me hit on these AMA podcast questions in the Dash Discord channel, so then we can get to the super chats, and then everything else. But so Magnus asked, are there any plans to return to the format of having quarterly calls with DCG? That was a useful way for the community to gauge DCG progress on multiple fronts in one concise place.
Yes, absolutely. The only reason we haven't done it yet is just because of resource constraints. So it's worth noting too that it's obviously with regard to leadership at DCG. It's been a long year. Prior to Ryan's departure, it's not just Ryan's departure, but of course, right after Ryan left, Robert Vico left, right? And Robert carried a lot of weight, and he had a lot of experience on the project and a lot of experience generally. Right before that, we had a change to the board. So there was a board member that just wasn't interested in participating anymore. So this is the DCG board specifically. So we downsized the board, then Ryan, then Robert. So, it's just been, basically, we've just been more focused on keeping up with things, keeping things moving, keeping the lights on, so to speak.
Yeah.
And
kind of
keeping the
started
trains
from scratch
arriving
in
on
a
time.
way.
Yeah, I have to say it again, it is not due to any kind of policy decision. I'm just being perfectly honest here, sharing insider info about DCG. There is no policy reason why we aren't doing that anymore. You can blame me, because if there's something I should be organizing, like on my CEO scorecard, a better score on transparency would have been to reestablish these quarterly meetings. So there's actually a couple that have paused the public quarterly meetings, but then also we're about a quarter behind on the Trust Protector DCG quarterly meetings too, right? And those are not public. We make redacted notes of those meetings public, but those are essential. Those are the shareholder meetings, right? So we are a U.S. corporation. Those are the shareholder meetings. That's pretty important stuff too.
Yeah. So let's go to this one. So it's kind of a two-part question, but I'll just do the first one and then lump the other ones together. Are you still interim CEO, or are you about to become the official CEO?
Still interim. That's the official status, and that's going to stay in place until we change it. The main constraint continues to be the same constraint, the same knock against me as was in place when we went into this, which is that I am now involved in the running of 3 different companies, right? One is a 20-year-old software company. That's just a services company. We build things. One is Zymerai, the newly branded Masternode hosting company, Dash Masternode hosting company. We still only do Dash Masternode hosting. And now the third one is DCG. So when we get to the end of the 90 days, we have to assess, is the limited role CEO acceptable? If so, then we can talk about moving forward. There's the compensation topic. Remember, I've been volunteering for this 90 days, which is also a challenge, and I'm not going to continue to do that for free. So we've got to work that out. So there's the time constraint to address, and then there's compensation. By the way, compensation doesn't exist in a vacuum. We have an overall compensation challenge with DCG. We're issuing supplemental proposals. We are behind on our break-even price as far as the Dash price point. So, adding to that is not necessarily the first thing we want to do, but of course we do need to hire some roles. Anyway, so those are the different variables that are at play. So it remains to be seen. That's what we're going to do next with regard to my CEO role. I'm obviously in the seat. I'm a loyalist. I like to keep at it. So that's the plan, but I do have to work out, some of these time constraints in the future. So we'll see.
Yeah, and so let me kind of bundle a couple questions together on you kind of mentioned a little bit on the stuff, but the last 3 months we've heard very little from you. Hope that's not an indication of how frequently you communicate with Dash community in the future. And of course, Sidam with his usual flair. How did you manage to perfectly replace Ryan Taylor with his very essence? It's like Ryan Taylor never left.
Yeah, that was
straight
perfect.
to definitely the German tact on display right there.
And I don't know Sidam very well. I don't know him at all. I don't have any one-on-one connection with him.
He's a good dude. He's blunt though.
The minute I read that, though, I thought, oh, this person's got a sense of humor. Do I detect a note of sarcasm here? And of course, I think, yes.
It's the humorless German humor,
Yes, which I appreciate. I appreciate all kinds of humor, I'll just say for the record, including the humorless kind. No, it is strictly a sign of the fact that I've just been buried. I've been buried in the details and in the weeds, intentionally and necessarily. The best I can say is that there's this podcast. There's a semi-regular attending of the after party. There's the Moonclave conference. That, of course, is a very big time commitment to go to a conference and schmooze, for 3-4 days and all that. If I'll say it again, I think I said it earlier in the call. If I had my druthers, I would go to a conference a month to evangelize for Dash and spread the word and recruit and bring in new people and new money, and then maybe come on the podcast, on the Dash podcast once a month. That's all I'd like to do, but that's especially for the first 90 days. I knew I had said publicly that I was going to try to increase transparency and outward communication, but something had to give. And knowing that I had some of these other time commitments for, communication and outreach and so forth, like the conference and the podcast, then I knew I just had to kind of take a bad score on it because this other stuff was just that important,
Yeah. And that's one of those things, like, you just can't, like, sometimes you can't do everything. Or some moments, sometimes you just arrive too late or whatever, and then just have to take the L and then just move on and get them back the next time. One thing about the conference thing, obviously, a conference a month is pretty hectic as a schedule. I cannot imagine doing that, unless the organization is very well staffed in other ways, and unless you full time kind of thing. That's just my personal opinion. Others might be not, but like once a quarter should be doable, right? So that's
for sure.
and that's a lot. That's not. I mean, compared to people that do like once every 3 weeks or something, it's not so much. But like compared to it's doable. Once per quarter might be doable. As far as this interview stuff, so the live shows are a huge pain for me to do because I have to like run everything back end and everything always goes wrong and stuff like that. But as far as like being on other people's shows, I could probably do a podcast like 7 a week or something, just because maybe that's just me, but like show up, talk from the heart for an hour or two and then be done. It's just like people get up and work out in the morning or whatever, just like get up and do because it's just chatting. It's just like chatting with your wife after work. What did you do today? You can talk for an hour. You can talk on this for an hour. So the challenge though is like scheduling, right? Because I'll obviously have you on whenever, but the thing is like, how do you get more? And I'm sure people like Marina can help figure that out. I will like to say, the Dash Marketing Hub does have an active bounty available for getting people on shows. And so you can get paid a few bucks or in Dash if you manage to get Patrick on a show. Just letting you know. So keep bugging Bankless, even though they'll never have any of us on probably. But keep bugging Bankless, keep bugging Unchained, keep bugging What Bitcoin Did. Maybe that's not a good use, but then like all these different ones. I just saw a nice interview with Zuko on Up Only. That's like Kobe and whatever the else podcast. I don't know. Just throwing out some ideas there. You can get paid to do this for your time if you're a community member and doing that. And so I'll obviously keep my mind open on these things, but just so you know. And so, I mean, you should be able to, I mean, do you think it's achievable to be able to do like a couple, like at least one a week, as far as like a show up, talk for an hour, and then bounce?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that much I can eventually just, once it's baked into the schedule, then it's baked into the schedule. I am as scheduled as anybody else on the planet. So, but it's just a question of getting it in on the schedule, right? And that has to do with the rest of the workload, how the rest of the hours of the week are divvied up, So, but coming out of some of these bigger, more Herculean tasks, like getting the delivery schedule under control and quantified better, and working on the strategic vision, and stealing thunder from other Web3 competitors, that sort of thing. Then, I'd be able to settle into more of an ongoing tactical role to evangelize. So, hopefully we can get to that.
Now, Strophy has a question, which, I can have maybe a little bit of input on as well, but mostly. So now that DCG marketing activities are not funded and the network has yet to propose a new entity responsible for large-scale marketing, How do you think we should go about pivoting from development to marketing our product now that launch is imminent? First up, is launch imminent? Is it still imminent? Because that's great if
Yeah,
it is. Okay.
I guess it depends on how you define imminent.
Hmm.
In my opinion, imminent is like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, V18 was imminent, right? That's
Hmm.
what I think of when I think imminent. Platform is not imminent in that by that definition. So,
Yes.
um, but and we're also trying to communicate more clarity about testnet versus mainnet, right? So having a functioning build on testnet is one thing, but having it activated on mainnet is very different. I think we should be careful about how we communicate those two things. They're very distinct things, and there's a long stretch of time between the two, right? So, um, yeah. Anyway, we are going to be able to communicate more precisely about the delivery date as time goes on, because now we actually have purpose-built tooling to do that. We never had that before. We never had dependency management and all those things.
Hmm. Yeah, it does help to have like something like that to. Now, as far as like the marketing thing, so I should like to clarify a few things. So first of all, I've come to understand that marketing can mean just about anything, right? And people have very different ideas of what that could entail. I think the thing that so the Dash Marketing Hub, which I help run, mostly we've been brainstorming kind of changing the name, especially since we did a reduced run rate capacity kind of thing, rather than just have like a slush fund every month that then we're like, oh, let's see what we can get done there. We cut that in a third, or cut 2/3 out, right? And just have it as like a basically for social media, like running TikTok and Instagram and a bunch of other things, and some smaller bounties here and there, like we're helping with the Ukrainian translation of Dash.org, for example. And there's another bounty of like fixing, like updating Dash.org stuff, like, oh, this exchange doesn't take Dash anymore, or this one, add this one. Like there's stuff like that. But in order to then do bigger advertising proposals, more specifically advertising proposals, right? And it's kind of funny when getting on people's shows as well as running ad campaigns, it helps to have there be something to promote. And like, yay, Dash is awesome. It's something it's just hard to like say just like that. There's got to be something else in it. And so, for example, we're in the process of doing a Cointelegraph partnership for some ad like that, and then we're also just wrapping up some, or I should say, I mean me and Marina with DCG, right, are in the process of wrapping up some landing pages to run a Brave browser advertising campaign. And I was thinking of spacing that about a month after Cointelegraph would do. So maybe if the Cointelegraph thing airs in the next couple weeks or so, I have to recheck up on that. Then a month later, I do that to advertise basically the all-in-one wallet. And the thing when we're talking about marketing, we should think about what do we market before Evo, so to speak. I believe we finally have the all-in-one live on crypto wallet we could do, because you can, and if it had bit refill in there too, so you could pay your like electrical bill from your Dash wallet, that would be even better. But I'm not going to be too picky. The all-in-one wallet, you can use Coinbase or whatever to buy your Dash. You can stake it with CrowdNode and soon to be trustless shares on CrowdNode, I guess. And then you have like the merchant map and the ATM map. It's got everything. That's a good thing to market. Obviously, future Dash Direct releases might be a great thing to market. And obviously, When Evo is another one. But I would like to, if every month or two, have like a big ad campaign run, just consistently. And then hopefully that gets enough interest and spice and, maybe price pump, who knows, we'll see, to then be able to start filling in the rest of the marketing thing around that. But that's just kind of my personal, roadmap, I guess, as we're stand right now. So I don't know if you have
Yeah,
anything you want to add into that.
yeah. I mean, you use the magic word roadmap, and I appreciate you starting with your thoughts because you've been doing Dash marketing a long time, right? Um, so, from my point of view, um, one of the things that we're lacking is a marketing strategy. So marketing strategy would be the marketing equivalent of Dash's vision statement, right? So this is starts off as philosophical debate, and then it gets increasingly more qualitative, more quantitative in the analysis, and then eventually you come up with a strategy. This is why we're going to do what we're going to do, and then this is the what we're going to do is Dash platform. But why are we even doing that in the first place? Why does it matter? Those are all those why questions, right? So the same thing applies to marketing. I don't think we have our best foot forward yet in terms of having a marketing strategy, and I think that largely stems from the fact that the vision for Dash platform isn't yet as clarified as it can be. So there's just kind of a almost organic flow here. Once the vision is clear, the strategy can become clear. Not that it's easy, but it can become clear. And then all the tactical marketing, there's a ton of tactical marketing that happens with Dash. You do metric tons of that. Marina's doing that. There's lots of people doing that. But all the tactical marketing is all downstream from a larger strategy, and the strategy is the hard part. So who are we targeting with Dash marketing, and why? Why do we think those people would care? One of the things that's been said about platform is that platform is so cool, you could do pretty much anything with it.
Or nothing.
And so anything is a synonym for nothing, right? So nothing in particular, anything at all, nothing in particular. Those are really synonymous statements. That's a very dangerous place to be with regard to a brand, right? So nobody does that with a strong brand, right? It's all much more targeted than that, much clearer value in return for using it or doing it or whatever, right? So this is a long-winded answer to Strophy's question there, but I don't think it's as there's some debate as to efficiencies or inefficiencies with marketing, any kind of marketing function being housed within DCG versus outside DCG, right? So that to me is less important. We're a DAO. We can work that out. We can debate. We can have the long comment sections and proposals, or all the different ways that we debate stuff. But we have the power to just figure that out on the fly and fund, what consensus tells us is the smartest thing to do. But I think that we need to really hone the marketing strategy, which requires, as a precursor, requires really honing the vision for platform, what it is and why it matters, and why you would use it versus any one of the million other solutions, right? And the U is going to be lots of different U's, right? Why should high net worth individuals be interested in Dash? Why should family offices be interested? Why should everyday people be interested in it? Why should developers be? Those are all different use cases and targeted users, right? A couple of related thoughts that come to mind. So Solana was at the Moonclave conference. Actually, one of the technical founders was there. And Solana has Solana Pay. You probably know more about Solana than I do. They have Solana Pay. They have somewhere in the ballpark of hundreds of millions of dollars that they spend on development and dApps and proof of concept stuff and marketing and evangelism and all of it together. There was just this headline that they created $100 million investment fund for just the newer Web3 style development, NFTs and stuff like that, right? That's 9 figures in case it didn't come through here with my audio. So, and by the way, then if you look at, what's Solana Pay? They say a lot of exactly the same things that we say, right? Lightning fast payments, near zero fees, so our thunder is getting stolen by a much bigger competitor. So all of this is where a part of a marketing strategy too would tell you where it's smart to compete. So generally speaking, you should compete where your competitors can't or won't compete hard against you in return, right? If you choose to compete, and by the way, so payments, right? So one of the default marketing strategies for Dash, just because of our superior technology, has been to market us as a payment solution. Well, that is like the biggest giant on the planet to pick on, right? So, no, the rest of the world, you don't understand because you're not Dash OGs. We are going to be the next great payments payment rail, right? Or payment solution. There's all these different things that are used to describe it, right? Well, guess who else was at Moonclave? MasterCard, right?
Of course.
I
And
don't
they're
think.
the old guard of that.
Yeah, and by the way, the incumbents are not sitting idly by. PayPal was also there, right? Actually, PayPal and MasterCard. No, they weren't on stage at the same time. They were on stage separately. So MasterCard is telling the world that, oh, listen, don't worry about all these crazy developers who are trying to get you to download wallets and use their payment rail. You can stay with the tried and true global instant network of MasterCard, and we'll handle things like fiat conversion. We'll handle security. We'll handle all of that for you just by using your MasterCard. So, I mean, that's some pretty serious smack talk, and they are an incredibly rich and powerful incumbent. And so I was just making the point that marketing strategy also has to take into account competitive strategy and where can you smartly compete. Last thing I'll say about it, and then I'll try to give a one sentence answer to Strophe's question. Sorry, Strophe. Strophe knows by now that I'm a little long-winded sometimes. Zymerai, if I may shamelessly plug, is probably investing some of the biggest dollars in Dash marketing strategy right now. So we're investing a lot of time and money in marketing analysis, in targeting, in technical marketing, in A/B testing, etc., campaigns, organic SEO, pay per click, and keyword marketplaces. We've had for a good 6 months. We've had a big effort going on here, but the whole point is it's a learning. We're trying to gather information that in turn can help feed into an improved Dash vision, and then an improved Dash marketing strategy, and then a lot of the tactical, like the foot soldiers just pick it up and run with it, like you and so many others. So I think that's what we need. As for who does it, whether it's the tactical marketing or the more strategic vision setting stuff, I don't care where it happens, but more of it does need to happen. So again, we're a DAO. We've got the flexibility to conceive some better ways and fund them and go. And so I suspect that it's probably going to happen that way. We might even have a new proposal maker or two in the mix soon, to seek funding for some improved marketing. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean that would be nice. It's kind of one of those risks of being new in like the new world, and crypto is just anything but defined. And it's kind of funny because Dash comes from those old, kind of the old bones kind of era where it was like Bitcoin, Dash, Monero, those kinds of things, where it's just like an open source project that people just sort of jump together on. And then kind of Ethereum was sort of the beginning of the VC era where there was an ICO. They've never wanted for money. And then, and of course, was an ICO platform. And then we get to the 2020, the Solana era, I should say, which I don't have high hopes for Solana just because of a lot. Like if we learn anything from EOS, it's really easy to burn through tens of millions of dollars and have nothing to show for it, right? But the sheer scale of things is insane to where if you can fund Solana stores everywhere and you can throw hundreds of millions here and there, and it just, there's no competing for, more old school kind of blockchain on just that scale. There's different kinds of competition though, because like who is going to promote or advance Solana without that kind of central authority, that kind of central fund? It's not going to be random OGs stepping up to the plate. It's not going to be, treasury proposals. It's not going to be that kind of stuff. But it is a kind of interesting thing about Dash did sort of pick the hardest road as far as like, we're going to be the new payment thing. And then there's all these companies that rush in. But what makes Dash different, of course, is that it's money, and the money is secure. The money is valuable. The money is scarce. And it's kind of like the both things. But then people are like, well, what about Bitcoin? And, but this could be hours and hours of just that. Let's go to the next one here. We're last couple before we start switching to the super chat and stuff. What
Yep.
was the outcome of the discussions on the Tornado Cash debacle?
Yeah, so we just had some preparatory discussions about that, just to make sure that we have a response ready. So the likelihood of the federales coming for Dash, because we're anything close to what Tornado Cash was, is a vanishingly small likelihood.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the reality. However, especially when you're running a corporation, you have to think about risk scenarios and even unlikely risk scenarios, right? Like lightning strikes and blah blah blah. So we've had some meetings. One of the things I've been impressed with is that Dash has some really strong response already prepared. Ryan Taylor and Glenn Austin presented this material dozens of times, basically to whoever would listen.
Mm-hmm.
But it involves partners like Chainalysis and some others, and so it's real credible, real well put together stuff, very well argued stuff. This is all material that counters the any suggestion that Dash is a privacy coin, or worse, that we go any farther in the direction of, say, Mixer's Tornado Cash and all that. So this is just kind of causing us to dust off those materials, make sure they're up to date, make sure we have a response ready. But there shouldn't be too much risk. Part of the risk to a project is in the response, right? So if you tell regulators to pound sand, you're probably going to have a difficult time, right? And here again, I talk a lot about making sure we keep in mind our competitive position. So we cannot afford a lengthy, expensive legal defense, right? So
yeah, of course.
We certainly don't want to be starting any fights with big bullies. So we've had some internal meetings. We are plenty well prepared for how we might respond to that. There's nothing too draconian that we would have to do. Like, what if someone told us to turn off CoinJoin? You say, okay, here's a build online that turns off CoinJoin. It doesn't do anything. This is where, like, regulators don't really understand decentralized applications and blockchains and open source software, right? So, but hey, just for compliance purposes, okay, here's the build. It shows what you want to see. Nobody's going to download it, but we did what you want. We also, we have partners in this kind of battle. So we're members of the Blockchain Association. We're dues-paying members, and that's a DC-based lobbying group for the blockchain industry. So we've had a couple of meetings with those folks. So I will also share that I had. So the legal counsel for Senator Cynthia Loomis, who is the one of the two Wyoming senators, very, very, the Delaware of crypto, right? Very crypto-friendly state, the national leader on crypto-friendly, blockchain-friendly business laws and corporation laws and so forth. So her general counsel, Chris Land, was at the conference, and he very openly says, look, don't think about the Tornado Cash thing as any kind of a precedent setter. It's almost certainly going to turn out to be a one-off situation. It was opportunistic on the part of the prosecutors. They actually did have some good reasons to try to flex their muscles. I mean, the Tornado Cash people really, really pissed off the wrong people, and in a bad way, right? There was the whole North Korea connection. It's about the dumbest thing you could do is to get in the U.S. federal government's crosshairs as being anywhere associated with North Korea. What's worse, Iran? I mean, it's like
pretty much as bad as you could get without actively at war, which there is none of that right now.
So that was foolish. Anyway, but not much risk for Dash, really.
Yeah, and even as far as like the foolish thing, it's not, from my understanding, it was sort of unavoidable. It just happened to be that people using that North Korean hackers decided to use a tool available to them. And it could have been anything. It just happened to be this, and it happened to be a tool where you send money in to a container of some sort, and then it comes out laundered. It's like the same thing what we see with a lot of peer-to-peer trading, which is allegedly legal, where you can oh, I'm going to trade some Dash for some fiat with just some random person at a meetup. That's allegedly legal. But then you have a lot of people who have done that and have gotten like prison time for it because they've advertised services, they've done it at enough of a scale to constitute maybe a business, and they've made profit from that, and then they've gotten entrapped with some sort of, oh, this was laundered drug money, you didn't do KYC, you're going to prison kind of thing. And which is all like horrendous, and free people should not have to worry about this kind of stuff. But it does kind of make sense what caused it to happen. It's not like I don't know if that's a retroactive, like, I don't know if, in hindsight that could have been avoidable either. Just had to happen. And that's one of the reasons why I believe Coinbase is funding a lawsuit on behalf of several individuals against the Treasury Department because of the Tornado Cash thing. And so, I mean, Coinbase is about as big as you get for players in the crypto space. And they're not just complaining or writing an open letter, all that kind of other stuff, but they're actually involved in litigation. So I guess that's a good sign that hopefully Dash doesn't have to do anything. It can be other than just be proactively part of all this, but not, kind of like part of the pack, because at least there's like a pack forming around in solidarity.
Yep, for sure.
Let me hit on this last one here, which could be just a wrap-up question to the entire thing, but it's not. What, in your opinion, are the next steps Dash community needs to take in order for Dash to become great again?
Yep.
Mada.
So I'll try to get this in 60 seconds. We need to clarify the strategic vision to make sure it's as compelling as possible and it's as competitively smart as possible. Then we need a marketing strategy that tells us how to share that message with the world, but in a very in a technical marketing fashion, right? Targeting, measurement, rinse and repeat, etc. We need to make sure that in parallel to all that, we start to deliver on time. We've got to make sure we improve our credibility as a professional software team to deliver software when we say we're going to. And then we need to bring new people into Dash, and lots of new people. We need much more download of our wallets. I talked to some people who I had like 2 million downloads of a wallet in 30 days time, right, at the conference recently. We need more users because we need more users. We need more developers. More developers will bring dApps. That all comes downstream from the vision and the marketing and the targeting of the message. It all kind of comes together. And then, of course, as we so some of that will bring more money in, but then we actually want to bring more money in, right? So we do need to, investors should care, of all stripes, should care about Dash. There's just for investors, it's compelling, right? We have master nodes. Someone, I think it was Ryan, pointed out in the chat, we're on sale right now. It's a great time just to buy Dash. Investment companies, there's all kinds of market makers who just will make a market, inject some liquidity. That's probably what's behind a lot of whatever price pumps you see. Just today it happened, went from 45 to 48 or something like that. There's all kinds of market making activity. We need to reach out to those people and get them more interested in doing that kind of stuff for Dash, which over time just pulls the price up. The more the price goes up, the easier it is to attract, right? So it becomes this kind of synergistic thing. So that was more than 60 seconds, but I think we need to hit on all those things for Dash to get back to really great again. And I'm assuming part of the definition of great again means a much, much higher price, back to the old days, right?
Yeah. Now, as far as the super chat thing over here, Onetime had a question here where it kind of got cut off a little bit by this, but he basically quoted you where he said, I have to be brutally honest, I can't imagine any reality in which Dash secures a New York bit license. It's just enormously expensive and labor intensive, which is really saying the same thing twice. Not to mention, I'm also having a hard time imagining how the majority of our network would support this as a viable strategy for Dash, most especially given our current cryptonomics. And Onetime added to that, are there any future circumstances where acquiring a New York bit license would make sense? And would it have to only be done by DCG?
That last question is a really good one. And this gets into all the really down and dirty details of DAOs, right? Like who holds the intellectual property in DAOs? Who holds patents in DAOs, right?
Yeah.
Who holds licenses? Who issues the licenses, right? Who's the actual issuer? So I don't think I take that back. If I had to bet, remember, I'm not a B school CEO. I'm a developer CEO, so I don't always have great answers to these business specific questions and compliance specific questions. But if I had to guess, I would say that it probably does make sense for DCG to acquire the bit license, which comes back to the question then of how do we allocate resources and money to it. There's another question in there, which was, is there some future? So yes, as Onetime hinted at in his multi-part question, I am referring to right now. There's no reality right now in which this is like a good near-term strategy. When I say near-term, I'm talking about something we embark on in 6 to 12 months. We'd also have to understand the why, right? So I actually, after that came up, I asked internally, like Glenn is as close as we have to legal counsel. We don't have internal legal counsel. We have external legal counsel. But I wasn't going to put the lawyers on the clock just to answer the question. So I asked Glenn, and Glenn has a lot of knowledge on this kind of thing. So he had kind of a mixed answer as to just how important it is to us. Like, is it actually holding us back from getting listed on major exchanges? That was a suggestion. Additional major exchanges, right? So if that is the case, then sure, that becomes a compelling argument at some point to put time and money towards it and get it done. But that just kind of like came seemingly out of the blue to me as just a suggestion, as like something that's holding Dash back right now, and I just don't see it as like one of the top 5 things. Maybe at some point it's a top 5 thing. If it becomes a top 5 thing, that probably means that we are doing good. We're doing well, because now we need to get a New York State bit license. And remember how like roundly this thing was criticized when it first came out, and nobody had it, right? That was only like 2 years ago. They'd sold like one. They'd issued like one, and then 8 or something like that. I think it's still a really low number. I don't know the current number, but so anyway, that's the rest of the answer to Onetime's question there. If the trend is such that this is becoming a cost of doing business, then sure, we put effort into it and get it done.
Yeah. So I guess regarding that, what major hangups do you think are existing because of a lack of this? I know that to a certain extent you have there's quite a few, like for example, Coinbase does not support Dash in the state of New York today. It supports Dash everywhere else, but I know like my friends in New York who even work for the other DCG are saying, yeah, we can't buy Dash because we have a New York account. And obviously not on Gemini, but then again, a lot of assets are not on Gemini. But then it seems like BitPay and Coinbase Commerce and stuff seems to be that there could be a hang up there, regarding kind of universal acceptance and a bunch of fiat on-ramp things I've heard alluded to. I don't know if you could shed more light on that.
Yeah, I don't have a lot more to add to that. The exchange listing conversations that we have are more opportunistic, meaning that they come up or they were already in progress. There were a bunch that were already in progress, of course, upon my arrival in the CEO role. Or they just come up opportunistically. And if they come up opportunistically, then pretty much by definition, it's someone who doesn't have this kind of a restriction in place to list Dash. So we'll work with those folks quickly and get listed. Same thing with the conversations that were already ongoing. So I don't know off the top of my head if there are major holdups. Again, this wasn't like a primary topic of discussion upon my arrival at DCG, or even remember that as a trust protector, I've been involved with DCG operations prior. I was attending the DCG board meetings since the beginning of the year after Ryan's departure. So it just hasn't been a primary focus for DCG thus far, nor has the topic of what limitations are we facing because we don't have this. That also hasn't been a primary topic of discussion. But obviously, it's just like any opportunity that we might choose to pursue. If more and more information becomes available that says, "Look, we just got to do this," then we'll do it for sure.
Yeah. Do you think that there's is more like a musing than I guess a question, but I wonder if maybe the strategy is not to go for the bit license, but to go for the growth and the partner acquisition in enough things so that you get automatically bit licensed, as it were, to where explicitly acquiring it doesn't, becomes not necessarily a thing. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I can't remember where, someone was talking about that recently. There was a suggestion that if one of your partners had a bit license, does that automatically sort of confer the license upon you? I think the answer was no, but it was a similar kind of argument. Anyway, yeah, that's the whole point. It just comes back to my question of what's in it for us if we do this, and what if we don't? So then the other question, you have to ask the other question in a different direction. What if we don't? What are our opportunities if we don't do it, right? It could be that we're just freer and clearer to do the things we want to do competitively without it, in which case, if we can grow that way, then why bother? This is, we have to remember that this is coming out of New York, right? Which is, considered the existing financial center of the world, one of the main financial centers of the world, right? But that's conventional financial centers, right? So this came up a lot during the Moonclave conference too. There's all this talk about compliance with the regulators. And I, without starting a big fight, I had to point out a couple of times, look, let's not forget though that we're the innovators. We're the ones leading here, and these people work for us. So can we also have some emphasis on the innovators, on the regulators keeping up with us, and oh, by the way, not screwing things up. So I worry a little bit about the fact that this emanates from the incumbency of the old-fashioned, the legacy financial system, which is Manhattan, right? So maybe, in other words, maybe it's getting talked up more because of that. But for us, it's not necessarily an important strategy. So we'll learn more about that over time.
Yeah. Also, should be pointed out, I don't know if this makes it less urgent or more urgent, but California is coming out with its own bit license kind of version. Yeah. And I don't know if that makes the idea of having a bit license less necessary because now everyone's got one, and like whatever dilutes the power of each one. Or if now, California is Silicon Valley, which is kind of the tech center, or the old tech center, I should say. Definitely not anymore, but like still holding on. So you have the old finance and old tech center. If you're in fintech and you're not in California or New York, you might as well not be in the US at all. I wonder if it would have that kind of effect.
Yeah, like why doesn't Wyoming have a bit license? That's one of the first questions I would ask. And I would want to go to Chris Land and also Caitlin Long, who's been a real thought leader coming out of the legacy financial system. She was on Wall Street for 20 years or so. And she was one of the real leaders in Wyoming in crafting all that legislation. But guess what? One of the things they didn't craft after 16 or 18 laws on the books was a bit license. So why is that, right? I think there's some interesting reasons why that's the case. And like you said, there's now copycat effect going on. You have these titans of the legacy economy. California is like the 7th largest economy on the planet as a comparative economy, right? And Manhattan's Manhattan and all that. So yeah, they're going to have their say, but we don't necessarily have to jump on that bandwagon.
Yeah.
Should I just fire through the chat? I've got it
let me
here.
Let me hit on this one first. So, GreatWolf in the super chat thing, it says, my view on this is Dash needs to find a way to get more volume and higher price on the market. If that's achieved, We won't need to worry about the bit license because that problem will solve itself without DCG having to worry about it. Immediate example, see Dogecoin getting on Gemini in a hurry.
Yeah, and that's my instinctive reaction to it all, is let's just succeed and let our success take care of the rest, including take care of the price. And then, of course, as price goes up, then you attract more heavyweights, and then the heavyweights, kind of do your battles for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I prefer that approach too. It relates to, Ryan asked one of my favorite questions: have VCs buy Dash at this low price? I'd welcome that. I agree with Ryan on that. I think that the best way to invest in Dash is to invest in Dash. Buy Dash, buy lots of it. Again, shameless plug, buy lots of masternodes. I'd love to help a family office spin up 100 masternodes tomorrow, right? Those kinds of buy orders, that kind of buy activity, that obviously sends price signal around the market, and then you get this nice gradual price increase. All that, by the way, that's just kind of the buying and selling dynamics, the effects on our price. It's a signal to the market that more people are coming to the coin, right? And so we're rewarded with a higher price. That's all separate from any good news that we can pump into the system about releases or our vision for platform or that sort of thing. So if we can get both of those dynamics moving in the right direction, then it'll take care of itself. The price will come way back up, and then if we come out, I think it was Ari Paul, Block Tower Capital. I got to meet Ari in 2018 at a crypto conference in Utah. He's an incredibly smart dude. I follow him closely. So it was Ari who said that the people who are coming out of this current, whatever you want to call it, crypto winter, the projects that are going to come out of this one are going to be in a very different place than anyone else who survived up to this point. Because it's just going to be much more of an endorsement of staying power, and endorsement of whatever tech you have going on, So that's what I mean when I say if we can get the momentum going, we can probably get kind of a nice unstoppable momentum into the future, and then we don't have to, we're not pushing so hard.
And that's the key thing. I do think to a certain extent, first off, staying power does matter because the number of projects that just hit their hype cycle and then are gone is pretty staggering. And it's kind of like the only ones that have not just hit a hype cycle and been gone were Bitcoin and Ethereum for the most part. And then you have a little bit of, you could say Litecoin and Monero kind of stuck around pretty well, but didn't do their former glory. And then Dogecoin kind of was always sort of there for a long time, and then had just an insane pump, and is probably, in my opinion, not financial advice, but going back to just being around, but not really a major anything. And it's each, I guess if you manage to maintain or increase in relevance over time, that's a great sign. And so that's one thing that, transaction volumes would probably, speak volumes to, no pun intended. But the thing is, and that's the other thing that, like, when we're talking about things like Solana doesn't work. I don't want to say, I know that Mark gets all testy when I talk about this stuff, but like, it's breaking all the time, right? Like the entire network just doesn't work. Something which, as far as I know, has never really happened in Dash's entire history, or if so, could have been way back in the beta stage. Definitely not this stage of money. And Solana makes significant, compromises as far as decentralization and possibly security and other things. And I don't even know about privacy, right? So there's something to be said for having a usable crypto now, where the user experience, where everything works, right? The end user product works. You can use Dash today to buy things. You can use it today to earn trustless yield and not have to worry about a DeFi rug pull or some big exploit or something taking away all your masternodes. It's solid today, and the products are getting better. And that's something that I think that Dash has lagged on, and before basically this year, before what I would call the Dash Direct era, is polishing up the end user products. And Dash Direct, of course, now you have an end user product that finally works. I mean, I remember Dash.org gift cards and then Bit Refill and a bunch of other these things that like 5 Masternode owners use and no one else, you know? And then finally we have something like Dash Direct, which I've gotten people from other communities to start using Dash in order to use that. And then you have the wallet, the all-in-one wallet, and the one-click staking, which I think we're averaging like 1.7 new masternodes per month on CrowdNode in the last year or so. And so, I mean, that's clearly a product that's successful, that's gaining users. And Dash Direct, I think got really close, but because the card thing got pulled, and temporarily, hopefully. But because that thing, it never quite got off the ground. We never managed to really, just when I was ready to launch a big Brave campaign, like Brave advertisement campaign to get it all in, just get rugged kind of. But like once that's out, that's something you can be promoted, and then we can see like growth in users and like the end user product kind of thing. I don't know how much, I mean, obviously you've kept track of your own company's progress. What's been the kind of the user growth picture over the last few years, if you could summarize it? Like just as far as like, are people, who's buying masternodes, who's not buying masters, who's getting rid of them? What does that growth kind of look like?
There's not a lot of growth, to be brutally honest. So in fact, if you look at the global masternode count, it's down from a recent high. When I say recent, I'm talking, I think within the last, say, 2 years, we were at a high of about 5,200. And I think the current count as of yesterday is more like 3,700. So there's a pretty distinct decline. There was an interesting drop just about the middle 2 weeks of August. There was like somewhere between a 200 and 400 masternode drop, possibly relating to V18, but I don't think so. So, but anyway, the longer term trend is down, right? So the good news is that as far as all the variables are concerned, masternodes, the smaller number of masternodes at this level of usage means more rewards. So that's a positive. But that's actually, so I think what's happening with CrowdNode, which is really cool, but CrowdNode is pent up demand for fractional ownership. So there aren't really any good fractional ownership solutions. CrowdNode solved it, and you can see now that anyone with 5 or 50 or even 500 Dash can get in on masternodes, right? So clearly there's pent up demand, and that's the growth rate that you're seeing there. But once that demand is satisfied, I'd be curious to see, what is the longer term trend in fractional ownership. Obviously, I hope this is obvious. I want CrowdNode to do as well as possible. It's good for Dash. At Zymerai, we're not focused on fractional ownership. We're focused on full masternode ownership, high net worth individuals, family offices, and investment funds and firms and so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but then there are other user metrics too, like our wallets. As I understand the metrics, Brian Foster has probably the best metrics on this. He can correct me if I'm wrong, but they're not eye popping. Whatever growth statistics we have. So this is just reflects kind of the recent history of the project, where we've just been kind of holding our own in terms of our community size and all that. But we have to ship more good software and then keep the growth going.
Yeah. So if you got a shout out to XKCD's site, mnowatch.org. If you go there, there's a statistics page, and it shows a chart of collateralized versus enabled masternodes. And over the last, few weeks, there's been an uptick in collateralization, as in there's been a growth in masternodes, but there's been a giant drop off of active masternodes because of so many that have not upgraded to version 18. And so it seems in the short term, in the last couple of months, there hasn't really been like selling or dumping or whatever. But it's been modest kind of growth. One thing that's kind of interesting to think about. It's funny you mentioned like the pent up demand kind of thing of fractionalized masternodes.
Hmm.
That pent up demand, it might also be easy UX masternodes where you don't have to like run all this thing, you don't have to do all this other stuff. There might be people who can afford over 1,000 Dash who still will just use CrowdNode because one click stake, one click stake, one click stake, and then the voting system's right there, and it's easy. But another thing to think about also is the when you think about the ROI, right? As far as Dash was the first one of the first DeFi coins, if you could call that, staking coins where you can get yield from putting aside some money. Of course, proof of service is different from that. The node has to do a bunch of work, a bunch of other stuff. It's not a consensus layer thing. But with the block reward going down and the master node count going up, obviously that makes the ROI, the APY, as it were, start to shrink over time. And it's possible that any kind of declines, and I do also think that a bunch of larger players have just exited Dash for greener pastures, especially with the competition for some kind of staking yield, like the yield competition. But it's also possible that the declining ROI for Dash, it just hit equilibrium right around now, where it's just like it's not worth it. But then enough people dump off to where it goes back up, and this is the level that's sustainable. And then it's also possible that as the DeFi bubble pops, people start to see more and more unsustainable ROI versus sustainable ROI. Like what can they count on? And then you have people kind of coming back in. But there's a lot of different things that could mean.
Yeah, like Celsius promised 12% returns.
Yeah, and then they gave negative all your money percent.
Yeah, exactly. But that turned into zero, right? So, yeah, I've had real world investors tell me recently that investors can achieve 7 or 8% almost anywhere. They have all kinds of vehicles for parking money to achieve that kind of yield. So,
what's the risk for that typically? Is it like relatively risk free? I mean, I want to give that that rule. Well, I think it was Raul Paul. I can't remember the meme now. Basically, risk free, and then Terra collapses thing. But what's the risk profile for that 7-8%?
These are all legacy. I think these are the risk off type of investments. Mortgage funds, and there's all kinds of places. I'm not a finance guy, but big money in particular can always get 7 or 8 points. What's compelling, and this specifically applies to Dash, is that Dash, because it's on sale, sure, it has the yield, and that's something that counts for something. But what's more compelling is a 30x multiplier, right? And,
of course.
And because we're on sale, we as long as we execute, on our vision, and we steal some of that Web3 thunder, and we have something compelling to offer, then the chance of like a 30x gain from where we are now is entirely possible. So that's what I'm told is most interesting to investment dollars, but we got to convince them.
Yeah, it's so back to like the original 3-point thing. And by the way, we're kind of getting towards the end of some of these questions. So if you guys have extra questions, I will prioritize obviously these super chat questions. And we just got one fact a little bit ago. Let me just hit one time. But anyway, if you have any of those, then make sure to leave those in now, and we'll get to them. Onetime says, in 60 seconds, why is Dash a good coin to invest in? Dum bum bum bada bum. Okay, so in 60 seconds, why would you think Dash is a good coin to invest in? Tell me like I don't know.
Well, we've had the best tech for years on many of the measures of best tech, right? So lightning fast payments, instant send, private send, although we're not supposed to call it private send anymore, CoinJoin, and so as a payments solution, it's been superior for a long time. Security is superior. There's investment opportunity. There's the layer 2 network, and that's interesting for all kinds of reasons, security and investment wise. I mean, it's a leading crypto that it's the best crypto that few people, not enough people have ever heard of. I guess that's what
Yeah, of course.
too. So yeah. But Onetime's question is so interesting because he's an OG, right? And he's a true believer. We have got to start saying something new about Dash as the compelling reason to get into it. It's got to be capturing some of this Web3, stealing some of this Web3 thunder. Because I worry that if we keep saying we've had, fast, near free transactions for 8 years, eventually that's just going to fall on deaf ears and no one's going to be listening anymore.
Yeah, I mean that is an interesting point. I feel like Dash's messaging on that is kind of a 2015 or 2016 messaging that just didn't evolve. And it's true, and Dash has gotten better at this over time. And Instant Send has gotten more secure very recently, and everything's going great. But I just remember that it's like when Bitcoin was new era question of confirmations of like, well, Bitcoin, you got to wait for at least one confirmation, if not 3. So that's 10 to 30 minutes before scaling problems happened at least. And then, well, Litecoin, you can do 2.5 minutes, but then you need like at least 6 of those. So it's like evens out. And then Dash is right away. But no, there's so many things that are instant. Like, I mean, I don't want to give too much time, but like Nano is instant. I wouldn't really touch it, or for the most part, for a variety of other reasons, but relatively instant. The Lightning Network, once you set it up, like once you're in a channel, it's not instant, but it's like within 8 seconds, it'll try to route until it figures it out. And so it's like relatively instant. Like almost everything is instant. And then you even get stuff like, say, Bitcoin Cash or something, which is definitely not instant, but for 90% of consumer purposes, when you hit send, it shows up right away and that you're done. So it's not instant, but it's instant, right?
Yep.
And so that instant context thing has been kind of diluted by a lot of things.
Yeah.
Now, just off the top of my head, something that I think could be a good Dash selling point is the most secure money in the world. And I think that's something you could make the argument for, because with chain locks and instant send, you could make the argument is more secure than anything, including Bitcoin. Depends on how much you trust master and distribution, things like that. The thing is, the other part of security is governance, because, I mean, by the fact that you're sitting right there, you know that there's a functioning governance system that's just like, when something is clearly not headed in the correct direction for Dash, the investors can make a decision and change things. They don't have to do a hard fork, don't have to do all this crazy stuff. And, the money's kind of secure there. And the other part of like the security aspect, other than just the permanence of the blockchain, like old school Bitcoin style, is it's just the fact that I briefly lost the train of thought there. But the privacy, that was it. The fact that a UTXO model coin, it's not as terrible as Ethereum, where you have one address and that's it. And then you have to use something like Tornado Cash and get busted, And you can be, with CoinJoin, you can have a decent level of privacy, like pretty much like right out the box, and you don't have to have any risks of experimental tech or anything like that. So that might be a thing to advertise to people. I don't know if you like that most secure money in the world kind of thing.
I do. I think that security will eventually be something that's just a cost of entry, of being at the table, right? It's not something you'll necessarily be able to brag about. We can brag about the fact that we've had X11 and all of that. Yeah. Another way to make this same point, though, is that the history of technology and products and businesses it's a graveyard of failures that were better fill in the blanks, better products, better designs, better tech, right? So a lot of our OGs are are gearheads. They're deeply technical, and that's
Mm-hmm.
great. That's typical of early adopters. And there's all that. We have lots of Dash love in the community from those folks, but Dash love is not enough. It's not enough to get us to the promised land. We need to differentiate and execute and make a compelling pitch about it all. So, or I see Ryan repeated his question from earlier in the chat. Given Dash's excellent security for MNOs and the lesser need for mining, and given the heavy financial needs of DCG, what are your thoughts on reallocating more funds from mining to the Treasury? I'm pretty sure Ryan's brought that up before. I think we've even talked about it. But yes, I'm in favor of it. I would want to hear from miners, not to marginalize them too much. But yes, in theory, I'm certainly agreeable with that concept.
Okay. Why don't we wrap this up with this last question here from GreatWolf? Says,
Yeah.
What's on Patrick's immediate agenda for the coming days and weeks? Anything you can share?
Yes. I have to write a report, right? If I'm going to be given a report card, that must be in response to a report, right? So I have to kind of wrap up this 90-day effort. I want to try and put a bow on it and have a clear report on what's happened in the last 90 days, just generally, and also with regard to my role. Put that out there, let that be a target for people to aim at, and have some discussion about that. And then that in turn is not just an update to the community, but it's also then starts to get us to talk about what's next after the 90 days is up. So that's what I'm focused on. It's those 4 big items on the CEO scorecard, and wrapping all that up and reporting on it.
Mm-hmm. All right, sounds pretty good. So where could people find most of what you're doing specifically? Obviously, you mentioned they can ping you at any time. Like if they mention you specifically on Discord, seems to be the big one, but also in the forum and stuff. Where do you put out unsolicited content the most, or things like that?
Where do I personally put out unsolicited content?
Yeah, or personally in your capacity.
I interact in the various channels on Discord, which I'm told is the largest Dash forum in terms of users. When I'm at conferences, I tend to have a pretty active outbound tweet stream going, and so I just did that at the Moonclave conference. Actually, we want to follow up on some of the metrics on that to see what the engagement was with those. But I am not putting out a lot of content, if that was the question. I certainly hope to do more of that, but other than that, it's just receiving inbound requests, at mentions, pretty much anywhere you could at mention me, or if anyone wants to get in touch, you can email me at patrick.quinn@dash.org, or patrick@trust.org. That's the Trust Protector's email. So I'm reachable in a lot of different ways, and I'm open for conversation with anyone, anytime, especially in the CEO role. So I want to make sure that if anyone has anything to talk about or complain about or anything, I'm available.
All right, nice. Well, I think it's that time. Thanks everyone for watching. I should direct you towards the after party, which every time we do a Dash podcast for sure, but sometimes on the other shows. Afterwards, we just hang around in capacity, kind of like this, but not recorded, not broadcast or anything. And as many people as you want, just join into a room and just chat until sometimes the wee hours of the morning. People come and go. And yeah, it's a good time. If you want to know where to do that, you can ping me in either my Discord or the Dash Discord, or just anywhere you can find me, right? Anywhere you find me on Twitter, you can DM me. I'll get you in. Do whatever. Just reach out to me. I'll get you plugged in, and we'll have a good time. And so, yeah, thanks everyone for watching. The next live podcast will be this coming Thursday. I'm changing it up because I have a flight to catch on Friday and I won't be able to make it. But so that'll be the Digital Cash Rundown with a newcomer, which will be fun. And yeah, and then probably, 4 more weeks, we'll do another Dash podcast. Guest to be determined, but as always, I'm open to any and every suggestion. And there you go. Thanks so much for joining, Patrick. This was a good time.
Thanks everyone for listening. I'll see you around.
All right. Peace,
All right, take
everyone.
care.
Bye bye.